10 years. 10 years I've been doing this. That's a long dang time. That is a quarter of my life. And I have no plans to stop. But given how long I've been doing this, I think it's probably safe to say there's a fair amount of stuff on this channel that a lot of people have never seen. I know some of you have been here since the very early days, but let's be honest about it. There's over 1,500 videos on this channel alone, not even talking about how many videos there are in the Break Room of Geeks, my subsidiary channel, or on Vera Wylde, which is a whole other topic, and that channel is even older than this one. But there's a lot to talk about how we got here. How have I spent the last few years? How did this happen? So I thought it'd be fun to talk about the history of this channel, how things have changed, the milestones, the original intent, the swerves, the unexpected, the highs, the lows, and all that stuff. So before we can even start with what the channel was, I need to talk about what it was originally conceived as, because the original conception spawned out of something that actually predates YouTube. So in late 2004, I had just moved into an apartment with a friend of mine from college, and we both huge, massive geeks. He'd made like an independent film that I acted in, and we were in Boston. We were kind of creatively hungry. We also were working crappy temp jobs initially, just to pay the rent. But we had an idea for what at the time we thought was going to be a full half-hour sitcom. And at the time we were just calling it Geeks, the series. That was the initial conception. And it was going to follow 3 friends, 2 guys and a girl. And they were just going to hang out, talk about geeky things. There would be some of the somewhat standard sitcom shenanigans. They'd date other people. The plan was always for the female character to be a lesbian so that nobody would ever try and ship these characters together. Realize this was like way back when I had what I still thought was a straight cis hetero conception. So, the option for bisexual pairings or any of that didn't occur to either of us, I don't think, at the time. But in any case, that was the idea. And we actually shot some scenes for that. We cast someone. He and I played the male characters. We cast someone else. We shot some scenes. We never really had enough to pull together a full episode. Things changed. I ended up moving out. Unfortunately, later on, he and I had something of a falling out. But what I had at the end of this, and he wrote the entire idea off. Like the last time that we kind of sat down and talked with each other, like I've seen him randomly once since then, like just at a convention. It was a little awkward, but it wasn't too bad. But he said, you know what, if you want to do some of this stuff, do something with it. I don't care. So I had a handful of scenes. I was scrapping the stuff that was already shot because it was shot in an apartment I didn't live in anymore. But I had a handful of scenes that I kept mulling over for a while. So by this point, we're in about 2006, and I spent the next 4 years after that living in New York. And while I was in New York, I was mulling this stuff over a bit more. And around that time, YouTube started to become a thing. YouTube was well launched by then, but it was building steam and it wasn't going away. Now, YouTube at the time was not a place to host long videos. So I couldn't host like a half-hour sitcom, but I also had never had much luck framing this thing as a half-hour structured sitcom. Instead, I did have these handful of scenes, and I'd written some new ones since then that were basically 2 to 5 minutes, and I liked, but they were just these disconnected little scenes. And I thought, I could just shoot these as isolated shorts, which I was never able to do when I lived in New York. I had neither the means nor the time. But then later, after moving up to Vermont, I started thinking about this very, very seriously. And eventually saving up the money to get a camera, get some editing software, and get a semi-decent microphone. I recast. I was ultimately still playing the same part, but I recast with friends that I'd made since moving up to Vermont. We had my friend Nathan Colpitts as the other male character, and my friend Nicole Taylor, Nicole Bradford at the time. They were playing the other parts, and we pulled it together and we started shooting these. Now, initially, I shot 6 of these in its original state, and I shot all of these before editing and releasing any of them. And I had some unreasonable ambition about this, thinking, what it would be. But also, I did have the rational part of my brain saying, this will probably not take off. This will probably not become a thing. But you'll have gotten this itch of like, I still haven't done this, just off your back. You'll scratch that itch and it'll be done. So the very first video uploaded was a super lame teaser, like incredibly lame teaser, embarrassingly lame teaser. And then after that was a slightly better teaser. And then the first episode came out. And that first episode, I had ambitions for that first episode. That first episode was supposed to be one long, continuous, unbroken take. Nathan could not memorize the entire thing, so we had to break it up a bit. But we assembled like a whole bunch of other friends that we'd made, a lot of them from the local community theater, most of whom would not appear again, partially just because I didn't have that many extra parts. But this was shot in the house I was living in at the time. And we even had one shot on location, because there was like this, I could make a whole other story about this, but I wanted to shoot one in a video store because there still were some around here. Now, I called one that was in my town, and the guy, like, he was willing to let us shoot there, but he basically wanted to turn it into an overt advertisement for his location. He wanted big changes on the script because I had a fight break out. He didn't want that to happen. And eventually it just became like, this is ridiculous. So then I called an even smaller video store next town over, which is no longer there anymore. Shock of shocks. But they actually let us shoot there after hours. And I made all this up as I went. I don't have formal training. I don't have an education. I have a lot of passion, but I don't have an education in film. And if you watch these, you can tell. I don't know how to color grade worth a dang. I don't know how to light. And most of the time that doesn't matter that much because I shot during the day. But I'll tell you what, the stuff shot, that one episode that I shot at night, holy cow, do I wish I knew how to color grade back then or how to light. Because I also didn't have a decent lighting setup. I had painter's lights. Oh, it was bad. But I was still kind of happy with it. I thought the jokes bounced off well. I thought I got the rhythm of the editing down pretty decently, considering that I barely knew what I was doing. I was kind of happy with it. And I wanted to do more. And so I started scripting more. But it was going to take a while for me to write these, get everyone together, shoot it, edit it. Like, it had taken a while before. And I was like, the channel's going to seem dead until I get another season of this stuff out there. Well, that is what led to the first, what I called solo rant, just me rambling at the camera. And these were actually initially scripted and relatively tight. They became looser as time went on. The very first one went up in early 2013. And it had the very clickbaity title of How Final Fantasy VII Ruined the Final Fantasy Franchise. And it's a position that I actually don't have a lot of problems with. I don't look back and go, oh, that was a bad take. No, I get what I was saying. It was a bit of a clickbaity title. But I had a few more after that. And that started to be something that I would do on a regular basis because it was easy and it became good filler content. A couple months after I started doing this, I would do my first Doctor Who video, ranking all of the doctors up to that point. Now, that is a video that would prove to have some rather significant legs, which I guess it's worth mentioning at this point. For someone who is able to make this their living, I've never had a video go viral. Now, by most standards, they consider 1 million views to be viral. Honestly, I consider 500,000 to be well viral. But I've never had a video pop off like that. I have a handful of videos over 100,000 views, but they've all been slow burns. They've all taken months, if not a year or more, to crack 100K. So it's interesting now because I can look at the views on that very first Ranking the Doctors video, and it's got like 20,000 views, and I had like a couple hundred subscribers at the time. But the thing is, I know that 20,000 was not immediate, and YouTube analytics don't go back that far. But I know that was a slow build. And I think that probably did encourage me to bring back Doctor Who as a topic. Now, around that time, I was doing about one video per month on everything from Doctor Who to comics, superheroes in general. And I also got the second season stuff starting to go out as well. Now, that was not performing as well. So I did kind of know that at this point, the scripted stuff I'm doing because I enjoy it. And the instant I'm out of ideas, I might as well stop because it takes forever and it's not what's pulling in many views. And understand at this point, like the channel, this is a pastime. This is something I'm doing because it's fun, because I've got no momentum to do anything other than that. But part of my brain still says, do it better, do it bigger, improve it. And so I would start experimenting with different setups, different backgrounds, doing things in different parts of the house. Considering I couldn't light worth a dang, some of those look better than others. February of 2014 would mark the very first appearance of the flat cap, though it would not become a staple of the channel until a bit later. So for about the next year from there, I'm keeping up with doing regular videos. The second season of stuff comes out in the summer of that year. I get my hands on a green screen, which I don't really know how to use and only figured out how to use in the last couple of years, but it stuck around off and on for a while. I start a sub-series called Animation Junkie, which is basically just an excuse for me to talk about animated stuff that I don't have a reason to talk about otherwise. Now, also, as we got into 2014, 2015, I was really starting to pick up the pace. It was incredibly rare for a week to go by without a new video upload, and sometimes they would come as frequently as one every couple of days, though never for a sustained period of time. But I'm finding more momentum. I'm finding more things to talk about, and I'm creating more content. Around this time, new episodes of Doctor Who have started airing, the ones with Peter Capaldi, and those are starting to become very reliable sources of views for me, getting, for what was a big deal for me at the time, 1,000 to 2,000 views, whereas the Doctor Who related lists were getting in the tens of thousands on a bit more of a slow burn. The following year in 2015 would see the very first roundtable discussion that I had with Paul and Ryan, which of course brings us to, hey, who are those other people who are in your logo? Well, that's Paul with the chestburster, and that is Ryan with the lightsaber. So the roundtable talks were something that were just a lot of fun to do, and that also became the initial launch of the Council of Geeks podcast, because initially those were unedited roundtable talks, because I would trim those up, I would shorten those for the actual videos, because this was still back in the day before YouTube started to really favor longer and longer and longer length videos. So I was still trying to edit for time and keep things sub 10 minutes if I could, or for the roundtable discussions, under 20. But then I would put the unedited versions, I can talk, up as a podcast. And that was the initial Council of Geeks podcast. And not too long after that, I would launch 90s Comics Retrial, which was kind of the main feature of the podcast for a while, until I burnt out on that a few years later. I don't want to keep diverting to the podcast, but that's been a number of things over the years. That has been 90s Comics Retrial. That has been the extended roundtable talks. That has been Go Home Hollywood, You're Drunk, which was a really fun series I did with my friend John Van Luling. But then logistics got in the way of that. Then it was See Space Cowboy. Then it was reviews of classic Doctor Who. And then it became my working with Jesse Gender initially with What the Frell, covering Farscape, and currently with Jumpgate covering Babylon 5. And I have no idea what we'll do next, but we'll be on Babylon 5 for a while yet. 2015 would also see the release of the last of the scripted shorts. And I had said at the time that I finished it up, maybe if I come up with another idea I really like, we'll do another one, but that that ultimately didn't happen. And at this point, Nicole has moved away. She's no longer local, and I'm not living in the same house anymore. And I just haven't really had the urge to go back to that kind of scripted material. And I feel like we ended on a decent episode.
Share my pain, puny mortal. Oh!
2015 would also see my very first trailer reaction. That one to the trailer for The Force Awakens. Trailer reactions were something that I would start to dip in and out of, but ultimately they frequently would become copyright issues. So they were never a main feature on this channel, but that's when they started. In July of 2016, I moved into the house that I'm now in, and initially I set up shooting in a real bad space. The walls were super echoey. I was still trying to make the green screen work.
All it does is pad the runtime, and it's just so full of itself. It infuriated me.
It's real bad. It's real bad. Those videos are hard for me to watch. I did not have really the means to properly kind of insulate the walls at all, so it's echoey. It's terrible. It was the attic. Is where, like, it's a finished attic. It's not like dirty and dusty, but like cluster flies would get in there during the summer, so there'd be these things buzzing around my head. Yeah, I stuck it out there for a lot longer than I should have bothered. So by December of 2016, I shot my first solo rant with, well, not nearly as decked out, but with this shelf background, and that was at the time in my bedroom. And that was for a review of Rogue One. Now, there'd be a couple of random green screen attempts that would show up after that, but pretty soon after I would ditch the green screen, except for one major example a little bit later on. And that would become my main shooting area. And that actually stayed that way for quite a while. And ultimately, to my detriment, I've talked about this before, but it's not a good idea to shoot, edit, and sleep in the same room. I basically turned my bedroom into a bit of a dorm room. So I would shoot, in front of this. I would then go over to the computer and edit it, sometimes, into very early in the morning, and then go and crash in the bed. And because I had turned what should have been a relaxing space into a workspace, anytime I was in my room, I couldn't relax. If I tried to watch something for fun or play a video game or read or do anything like that, part of my brain was going, you could be shooting something right now. You could be editing something right now. Shooting setups right there. Computers right there. Why aren't you working? So it became a situation of, if I was in my own room, I was either working or sleeping, and that was it. And I did that for quite a while, longer than I should have. Also in December of 2016, I did my review of the first Fantastic Beasts film, which was the first piece of Harry Potter related content on the channel, which would go on to be a semi-regular feature right up until, yeah, we'll get there. Now, 2017 was actually a pretty big year, and it kicked off really, really well. I don't know if it was partially because I didn't mean to, but I accidentally, from the 25th of December, 2016, through January 4th, 2017, did a video a day. And I mean, part of it was probably the subject matter. Some of those were reviews of the final season of Sherlock. But, this stuff did quite well, and it set me up for a very strong 2017. Definitely way stronger than my years have been prior to that. 2017 would see a lot of things happen. It would see the flat cap start to become a staple of the look. And a little bit later that year, I would take kind of deliberate advantage of that. Because initially, the first introduction of the flat cap was basically just, I didn't like my hair that day and I didn't feel like dealing with it. Slap the cap on. So I tried to get more solid in my branding. The cap became a fixture in that year. I also did my first time, I would say, being deliberately angry with my content. Like, sometimes I do get angry, but I like to think I only do so legitimately because I'm honestly very upset. This was the one time, this was talking about the DCEU and ranting that it should die. And I was frustrated. I was annoyed. It wasn't completely manufactured. This was something I was genuinely irritated about. However, I did get shoutier than I felt. And the video actually did quite well, partially as a result of that, but it also didn't feel great. it felt a little forced. And so pretty soon after that, I kind of was like, don't force it. Yeah. That, like, if it happens, but don't force it. And I'm really happy for that decision. Now, later that same year, I started to get my first taste of fandom blowbacks because there were the Snyder Bros who came at me when I was incredibly skeptical of the initial Justice League trailer. This was even before Joss Whedon had taken over. And also, surprisingly, a lot of people really came at me preemptively defending the live action Ghost in the Shell because I was super skeptical based on trailers and what we were hearing. I mean, a lot of people came for me for that. Boy, did history bear out that they were not correct to have preemptively defended a movie they hadn't seen. And like, I feel in a lot of ways that has given me a fair amount of comfort for when I step on the wrong side of fandoms. Right from one of my earliest times of having that happen, I feel pretty vindicated since then. That can give you a confidence boost. It helps. So throughout that year in 2017, Doctor Who content is still consistently my best performing stuff, with occasional spikes for comic book movie related content as well. I'm still doing the roundtables with Paul and Ryan, but they are consistently the worst performing videos. But I do them because I like talking with these guys. And like, if anybody's wondering, the main reason that doesn't happen anymore is we've all got kids. Like, I already had a kid, when we started doing this, but now they both have kids, and like, life, man, logistics. The logo I did finally get done professionally. Later it would go through some revisions initially because I wanted a different look for the queer focused videos when I would do those. Later adding in Liz when she started appearing, never dropping Ryan or Paul, even though they basically have not appeared on the channel in person in years, but I still want them there. They're a part of the history. I will keep having them there. And in 2020, the artist for the logo very generously did not charge me extra to do this. Updated Liz's image to get rid of the wand, which was Harry Potter inspired. Instead, gave her the Infinity Gauntlet, which she wields as she sees fit, and I do not question. Now, in the tail end of 2017, I started doing a video a day, and I would stick for that throughout all of 2018. And part of the reason I was able to do that is the thing that I talked about. I shot, I edited, I went to bed. I kind of lived in that room. And while I don't doubt that that was probably a big contributor as to why 2018 was one of, if not my biggest growth years in terms of the channel really finding momentum, it's not a pace that would be healthy for me to do. And also, like, I like to think I do better quality work now. I mean, the videos at that point, I will say that it helped me hone into just the art of rambling, which I got very good at, partially by necessity because, staying up late to edit and comb through a video was exhausting and something I couldn't realistically do. So I got very good at turning on the camera, thinking a little bit in advance, what do I want to say, but very good at turning on the camera, rambling for 10 to 12 minutes, and then just slapping opening and ending credits on it and uploading it. If I could keep talking continuously and not do anything major, not have a major pause or a major flub or say something especially stupid, then editing time was real quick. The videos took longer to render than they did to edit. And that's a big part of how I was able to do that, which again makes it hard for me to go back and watch those because they just seem way less focused to me now. But I am, even now, dang impressed. But even before that streak really kicked off, 2017, as I said, was a pretty good year. And I broke 10,000 subscribers that year. So in January of 2018, I did a Q&A. And I took the opportunity to come out as gender fluid, to come out as Vera. Now, I'd been out elsewhere in my life. I was out to friends. I was out to family. But I confirmed it there. Now, part of the reason was honestly fear, because as I mentioned earlier, the Vera Wylde channel is actually older than this channel. And that had been at 10,000 subscribers for a little bit. So with Council of Geeks hitting 10,000 and having much better momentum, because uploads to the Vera Wylde channel were sporadic, not on a regular basis, And so that wasn't growing in nearly the same way, and it never has. But I realized I have more subscribers now to Council of Geeks than I have for Vera Wylde, which makes it increasingly likely, if I don't address this, that people who are here on Council of Geeks will find somehow Vera Wylde and realize that I'm the same person. And when I said that I was driven by fear, I didn't have a fear of being found out because I have no shame or embarrassment about my gender fluidity, or at the time, I often still thought of myself as a cross-dresser or discussed myself in those terms. But the thing is, what I was afraid of is if somebody else outs me first and I respond to that, it looks like I was ashamed because somebody said it before me. If I'm the one who says it, then nobody can say that I am only owning up to it because I'm embarrassed or as some kind of PR move. So I shot that video. I came out. I took the hat off because in the tail end of 2017, I got this hairstyle. The short around here. It was longer at the top. It was only like to about here. But I got that very deliberately so that I could put the cap on and it would look like a very short haircut, but I would have this thing that I could grow out. And then I got that dyed. Actually, it was like a few days before, like the day before I shot that 10K video, I got the color in for the first time. And so I showed that and I had that in the video and I uploaded it. And that was, that was a big thing of why the cap became important beyond just branding, because it was a way to hide. But I had that at the tail end of the 10K video, thinking only people who like and support me will get this far into the video. I uploaded it and immediately went to bed because I knew otherwise I would stare at it and stare at the comments. And I woke up in the morning expecting to have lost several hundred subscribers, drop back below 10K, see a bunch of people slinging nasty comments at me, and none of those things happened. Not a one of those things happened. The furthest thing from support where some people said, I don't get it, but it doesn't really matter to me. Now, granted, at the time, I also said, I don't think I'll ever be presenting on this channel this way. That clearly didn't hold true, but it was my thinking at the time. I thought, well, I have the Vera Wylde channel to look that way. But as a more feminine appearance became not a thing I did, but rather just me, yeah, things migrated over time. So I mentioned doing daily uploads. I pretty much managed that with only a couple of hiccups through the entirety of 2018. That streak held until March of 2019. And even then, it went to, like, sometimes it was daily for a stretch, but then it would go every couple of days. But I stopped forcing myself to do daily, but it was still pretty rapid fire. And as I said, 2018 was my most rapid growth year. Probably always will be. In 2018, my partner Liz made her first appearance on the channel where we both talked about the Black Panther review. 2018 saw me talking about Channel Awesome, basically the only time that I have dabbled in inter-channel drama. But it also kind of framed the way that I talk about these kinds of things in general when I talk about celebrities of various natures. Generally talking not about the initial actions, but of what is being done in the wake of people getting upset, what the PR response is, what's the conversation. And that's kind of always been the lens that I've gone at these things with since then, because getting overly moralistic about what someone did or didn't do, I'm not saying that there isn't a moral value to people's actions. There is, but I generally find it much more interesting and a little bit less fraught to talk about the PR fallout than about the things they did. You do need that information. It contextualizes, but it's not where I want to put my focus. And that's kind of been true from the start of me doing any of that kind of content. 2018 also saw my first collaboration with another channel, working with Stu Bagfull, whose work around Doctor Who in particular I had loved for a while up to that point. And Stu's great. I love working with him. In May of 2018 would also see my first tackling of an LGBTQIA+ representation topic when I went off on what I considered to be a form of queer baiting, where studios or directors or writers claim that there is representation, but it's not actually there in the text. And it's a phrase sometimes referred to as word of God or word of gay, specifically. Basically, well, the creators say that this character's queer, but you would not necessarily know that just watching the thing. And I went off. And that is one of it's like my second best performing video now. I'm actually still quite proud of that. But that would kick off what was for a time a monthly dedicated video to LGBTQIA plus representation topics. And I obviously still talk about it now. It's just not fixed that definitely once a month. It's rather as I form new ideas that I haven't already tackled. 2018 would also see Joel, my thumbnail guy. Joel Johnson would, what happened was he reached out to me basically saying, hey, I love your channel, but your thumbnails kind of suck. Would you be willing to let me try doing them like for a week? And remember, I was doing daily at the time. Let me try doing your thumbnails for like a week. And if you like it, would you consider hiring me to, and pay me to do this for you? And yeah, Joel's been doing my thumbnails ever since because he was great in that week. And I'm like, yeah, you're hired. And I would love to outsource more of what I do. I'd love to outsource something like the editing, but I can't afford it. But I do outsource the thumbnails because Joel's so much better than I am. I mentioned that I had gotten sort of my first initial pushback from fandoms a little bit before. I got my first taste of outright hate on a sustained level from commenters in 2018 as well, to two things. One, my Nanette review, where I praised that film, and that film kind of became a little bit of a lightning rod in and of itself. And also my video tearing at Scarlett Johansson for, at the time, accepting a role of playing a trans man. And yeah, I went off on that. I stand by how I went off on that. But part of that video got featured on an anti-SJW video from a channel that was, and still is, significantly larger than mine. And so the fans of that channel descended on mine and made my life a little bit of a nightmare in terms of clearing out the comments for a while. Not the last time something like that would happen, but that was my first taste of it. Fun. Since I'm doing daily video uploads, performance video to video varies fairly wildly, but consistently my best performing videos were those on Doctor Who, those on queer topics, and most of the list type videos that I would do, because those tend to have longer legs and they have more of a slow burn. 2018 also saw the beginning of overdue Doctor Who reviews, where I went one episode per week talking about episodes of Doctor Who that I had not already done reviews on, because I started, the very first review that I did was for the Day of the Doctor. So I had all of Eccleston, all of David Tennant's, and almost all of Matt Smith's run to do review videos on. So that started that in 2018 as well. 2018, I also did the intros contest. Somebody, I cannot remember who at this point, and I feel really bad about that. Somebody made me sort of a Marvel style intro that I used for a while, but I wanted something a little bit updated, making use of the logo. So I held a contest, and I ended up with new opening intros for the general topics, for Doctor Who specifically, and also for Nitpick Rants, which I kind of want to bring back, if only to use this intro some more, because it's really good. Why? In December of 2018, I did the very first live stream. Those I actually did weekly for a while, which was another thing I forgot that I'd done. Eventually, those would go bi-weekly within a year from having started. 2018 would also see me rank third in the top 50 WhoTubers poll that was done by SL Studios. The following year, I would come in at number 1. And yeah, I have no shame in bragging about that. I also launched the Patreon at the start of 2018 as well. So that's slowly building in tandem. Start of 2019, January of that year, I finally get this camera, so I have videos that don't look awful, though it would take me a while to stop using the autofocus. Sorry about that. Now, February 2019 is when things, they don't drop hard, but they start to slow down. Basically, my better performing videos are still my better performing videos, but how high things get is coming down, and a fair amount of stuff that isn't Doctor Who or queer topics or Harry Potter related or lists is coming in a bit low for what I was usually getting throughout 2018. Now, this slowdown, I did notice it prior to my easing off the daily video thing. So I think that was part of the reason, thinking back on it, why I gave myself permission to ease off the daily, because it wasn't seeming to be just continuing to grow. It was starting to taper off. Whatever help that gave me was easing off. And so it became a matter of, do you still truly, are you really up for doing daily, and kind of accepting, no, maybe I don't have to do that anymore. 2019 would see my first attempt at anything that could vaguely be called a video essay. I did do some scripted stuff, particularly with the queer content up to that point, but I wasn't really trying to structure it like a video essay. I wasn't trying to emulate those kinds of things that were becoming big. I wasn't using a lot of clips. My review, Patreon sponsored review for the first season of Titans would be the first time I would start to really dabble in that. And then I would go full on really trying to emulate that style and go in that direction with my full overview of Cowboy Bebop. It would not pay off in heavy views. I'm still quite proud of that video, but did not get viewed a lot. And that actually would end up holding true. Most of the videos I'm proudest of, especially in terms of like how I put them together, the editing, how it all pulled together, like the use of clips and all that, are usually not especially well-performing videos. I've just accepted that at this point. So sort of leaping off from what I said about things that aren't the main things that I do, really getting lower and lower and lower views, I started to get concerned that these are going to start dragging down the channel, but I don't want to suddenly stop doing things like just reviews of TV shows that I've seen, or there's also the patron-sponsored reviews, which are frequently a fairly obscure stuff that the videos don't perform well. So in October of 2019, I launched the Break Room of Geeks, the subsidiary channel that's pretty much all unscripted and is where the vast majority of my, basically any review material that isn't something where I think I have a grander point to make, like ended up being the case with my Sandman video last month, or isn't Doctor Who, because Doctor Who will always be here on the main channel. Well, new episodes of Doctor Who anyway. Classic reviews are in the break room. You get what I mean. That's what's there now. And initially it was set up to host Let's Plays, trailer reactions, again, because I would frequently get copyright claimed on those. And also initially some fan videos, like some fan music videos, which I'm also quite proud of, even though like I can't monetize those because of the music I put on them. But within a few months of the break room being set up, I start to put reviews for older movies or TV shows that I don't think are going to play that well, and the Patreon reviews start going there until eventually most of the review material goes there. 2020 wasn't great in a lot of ways, and not just, and even before like the pandemic hit. As far as the channel was concerned, it started out pretty weak outside of Doctor Who stuff. Everything else was not performing especially well off the bat. I did get to go to Gallifrey 1 in 2020. That was a very good time, and then I came home and pretty much everything immediately went into lockdown. April of that year, I did one of my favorite things that I've ever done, and it was actually thanks to Joel, my thumbnail guy. It was his idea to do an April Fool's video going over the history of Doctor Who and playing it completely straight and talking about all the actors who played Doctor Who and talking about all these American actors in this American TV show. He and I came up with who it would be, and he did all these photoshoppings of these different actors' faces on various doctors. It's still so fun, and it was great because the tone isn't jokey. It often took people like, it's interesting to see in the comments how far into the video it was before they realized what it was that I was doing. That was a great idea, Joel. I'd like, if I still wore the flat cap, I'd do a hats off to you for that one. Later that same month would see the very first drunk review on the channel after I watched cats in a group viewing experience, remote group viewing because lockdown. And yeah, we drank our way through that, and I rambled drunkenly. And if anyone's ever been to the live streams and has wondered why I end those by going, McCavity, the Drunk Cats review is why. So check that out for context, I guess. McCavity! 2020 would also see me no longer defaulting to the flat cap for anything that isn't a queer video. The flat cap will still show up, and actually I'll still even use it now intermittently. It's pretty rare, but like if I feel like it, I'll wear it. But that's the thing. Up until that point, for all of 2018 and 2019, it was basically, if it's a queer-related topic, flat cap comes off and I show my hair. Everything else stays on. Going into 2020, I said, no, we're not doing that. Wear it if you feel like wearing it, but if you don't put it on. And that's where it's gone since then. And as I said, my own sense of self has drifted more feminine over that stretch of time, and so it's appeared less and less and less and less. In May of 2020, I moved down into my current shooting location, which is, I just call it my office now, which is also where I've relocated my computer. So my bedroom is now just a room again, which is a lot better for me. Plus, I've got the sound going pretty good in here. I've got a decent lighting setup that works. The very first video that was shot in this location was a Nitpick Rants video, and I hadn't quite figured out the lighting yet. You can tell, but that's when I started shooting in the current part of the house that I still shoot in. 2020 would see the final attempt to try and resurrect 90s comics retrial in video form. I had done one previously in my just a kind of rambly style. I think I did script it, but it was not dissimilar to how, say, Linkara does his stuff. But I went all in. I brought the green screen back. I did a whole courtroom setup and format, actually taking on the roles of a defender and a prosecutor, making cases for or against the death of Superman. Because I figured, like, if I'm going to do this, let me pick one of the bigger things I've got sitting around from the 90s. And I poured a lot into that. And I said, this is this thing's last chance to be a thing. This is so much work. And I'm really happy with that video. But if this does not take off, then I'm walking away from that project. And it did not take off. And that will probably remain the last episode of 90s Comics Retrial. In June of 2020, J.K. Rowling gives her TERF manifesto. Now, I had already declared my conclusion that she was transphobic December of the previous year, but that was the point at which it was completely undeniable, and it was clear that she was not going to revise or pull back from her positions anytime soon. So that marked the end of Harry Potter-related content, other than occasionally discussing her in the context of things like Death of the Author. Because, I can't and I won't promote anything related to her. Part of me did consider privating or taking down the Harry Potter-related content that is still on the channel. Ultimately, I left it up and just put a pinned comment with a link to one of my videos, making it very clear that not okay. Super not okay. Few other big things that happened in 2020. In July of that year, I was laid off. So keep in mind, I've been working a full-time day job since before the channel started. So all through this, even when I was doing a video a day, that was on top of working a 40-hour work week at a job that I increasingly hated. I was laid off in July of that year, and when I announced it publicly, I included with that a request for people to support my Patreon in the hope that I could get the bump to that necessary to make this my living. And amazingly, it worked. It's tight. It was tight then. It's still tight now. If you are able to support me on the Patreon, it still helps. I still kind of need the help. No, I still do need the help. But the amount of support that I saw, that I got, it's what enables me to do this as my job, to make content at the quality level that I'm currently able to do it. Well, honestly, able to do it at all, because if this wasn't my job, I probably wouldn't have been able to put the resources into getting a computer when my laptop was on death's door. At this point, this channel exists because people stepped up and said, yeah, we want to help ensure that you can keep doing this. That's still amazing to me. Couple of other things that happened in 2020. In September, I launched the Kickstarter for my novel, Dreams of Fire, and that was fully funded by the end of the live stream fundraiser that I did, which also blew me away. That was incredible. And also that same month in September 2020, I dropped the masculine pronoun and just she, they. That felt good to do. 2021 would turn out to be a year of discussing problematic figures. J.K. Rowling would keep coming up, John Barrowman, Noel Clarke, Joss Whedon, Gina Carano, Amber Heard. And somewhat to my frustration, most of that stuff, some of my best performing things that year. And much like when I had pretty good view numbers on that very first time I did a deliberately angry rant, it would have been very easy or very tempting to dip harder into celebrity drama, basically. I didn't, because there's a limit to how much I am prepared or want or willing to talk about this sort of stuff. And I don't want it to become what I'm known for. I'll talk about it when I have something to say about it, or if I feel like it needs to be addressed, but I don't ever want that to be my focus, which makes it frustrating that it performs as well as it did. 2021 would also see basically the end of non-Doctor Who review related material on the main channel, because when my Godzilla vs. Kong and Mortal Kombat reviews both tanked, I figured, you know what? The review material just, other than Doctor Who, just isn't performing, and that's when pretty much everything went over to the break room. 2021, I would also start using the shorts format, which is something YouTube is still pushing. I did a whole video talking about why it's kind of a nightmare to use that format, even though a lot of my shorts perform well from a views standpoint, does not actually help me, because a lot of those views come from people who clearly hate me. And obviously at this point, I've dealt with people who really don't like me either because of something I said or something that they think I am, or that they otherwise think about me. I've been dealing with that for years now, but shorts real bad. Real bad. Most people who hate me seem to just avoid me. Shorts seems to push me directly in front of people who do not want to see me and will be angered by it. But like I said, I talked about that before. Throughout 2021, queer topics continue to do well comparatively to other content that I have. However, all of it is still down from what it used to be, with a couple of random spikes. Like, for instance, the one on queer YouTubers coming out on their channels. That one did shockingly well. That video would more or less directly go on to influence the interviews that I did with May Leitz, JXE, Jesse Gender, and James Stephanie Sterling, talking about their experiences coming out after having already built an audience. That's another video that I'm incredibly proud of. The format of which I would use again for a video over on the Vera Wylde channel, talking to a variety of creators on OnlyFans about their experience building that as a platform after already having built followings elsewhere. That one's even longer, and I'm even prouder of that. That's on the Vera Wylde channel if you haven't checked it out. Some other videos that I'm especially proud of, many of which have underperformed by number standards, but stuff that I'm really genuinely still proud of, include How to Fix Ghostbusters 2, Girl Fight, about the patterns of how women are depicted in action scenes and movies, a video from earlier this year on the depiction of consent, and my breakdown of why the Watchmen movie fails in adaptation by being too loyal to its source material. I'm actually incredibly proud of that one. Overall, as we hit the tail end of 2022, it's a lot like 2021 as far as the trends and algorithms go. Celebrity drama is still some of my best performing stuff. Doctor Who never stopped being a staple of the channel, and it never will be, but we have reached a period where it only performs well when there is new stuff dropping, be it episodes, trailers, or major news bits coming out When none of that is going on, things like the Take Two reviews, which are on pause but will resume again, don't perform especially well. I don't know how much of that is just a declined interest in the property under Chibnall's regime. Possibly, I don't know. We'll see if things pick up overall with RTD taking over again. I'm not going to stop talking about Doctor Who either way. Just would be nice if the numbers would get better again. Speaking of Doctor Who related, earlier this year, I went to Gallifrey 1 again, and I met Jason Hay-Gallery, who is the executive director of Big Finish, and I got to sit down and have a talk with him. That's another video that I'm quite proud of, simply because the dude recognized me at Gallifrey 1, and it was his suggestion that we talk. So, yeah, a lot of highs. There have been dips. There have been lows, at least as far as videos go, but also sometimes in terms of reception or, getting on the wrong side of an audience, occasionally finding out that there's a very rabid audience that I didn't realize existed that now hates me. That has happened with things like Inside Number 9 and the movie In Bruges. But for the most part, these 10 years have been amazing. I got to start out as an outlet for creative energies that I needed to get out, and then just became a way for me to ramble about geeky stuff when maybe I had thoughts to get out that I may not have had anybody else to talk to them about, and then to just keep doing that because I liked it and it was fun to sit and talk with my friends and to experiment with formats and to try talking about new things and to have the bonkers idea of doing a video a day and doing that for a year, to doing this way too much, to scaling back, to getting to do it for my living, to finding a better work-life balance, which is something I'm still working on, but seeing the quality of what I do get better. So I'm happier, prouder of things that I do. And to have this be my living, this has been an amazing 10 years. And I credit a fair amount of this to, not having burned out, even when I was doing a video a day, because I won't talk about stuff I don't care about. I went through a stretch where I was able to find a topic a day to do it, but I do this because I love it. And the numbers tempting sometimes. It was tempting to look at the numbers and think, I should do more celebrity drama. It performs well. I should be angrier. It performs well. But I'm really proud of myself for not ever really seriously dipping into that for the sake of better viewing numbers. Because for as long as I've been doing this, channel should be bigger, honestly. And anybody who is an analytics hound could have looked at what I was doing, looked at how I was performing, and could have told me exactly what I could have done to get higher numbers, maybe get to do this professionally sooner than I was. But I wouldn't have been doing it the way I wanted it. It was more important for me to grow this slowly and have it still be something that I love. Because it's still something that I love doing. It's been a great 10 years. Here's to the next 10 and beyond. Thank you very much for watching. What has been your favorite bit of nonsense I've done in the last 10 years? Or top 5 or whatever you want to do. It's a lot of stuff, like I said, about over 1,500 videos. You can drop something down in the comments and we'll talk about it. Like, share, subscribe. I imagine this is mostly people who are already subscribed, but even if you're new, hey, there's catching you up on everything. If you're able to support me on my Patreon, I mentioned it before, that's of great help. But no matter what, if you are this far into this video, what I really need you to know is you are beautiful, you are valid, you are loved. And in a phrase first brought up and suggested by a commenter as a possible answer for why this was still called Council of Geeks, even though that was a name that originated because it was a short about a group of people, and I initially had the roundtables to have a group and have a council, and that hasn't been the case in a while. A commenter suggested, oh, but we're all the council. And I've taken that and run with it. And so, yes, you are the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, for as long as I can keep this going, this council is adjourned. Time to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons. That would include Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Zach, Idolin, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. If you want your name said while these guys try and distract me, consider looking at the rewards of my Patreon.